My fiancé's ex showed up at the engagement party. Everyone froze. He held up a necklace and said, "Funny. She left this in my bed last week." I thought my engagement party was going to be the night where everything finally felt complete. Months of planning, endless arguments about seating charts, invitations, menus, and money had led to this one night where both families would gather under the same roof and raise a glass to what we all believed was our future. I remember standing in the center of the hall, glass in my hand, watching people smile and laugh under the warm glow of the lights. Her dress sparkled when she moved. Her smile charmed every guest who came near, and for a few short moments I actually let myself believe I had done something right in my life. Her mother gave a speech, dripping with pride. My best friend gave another, full of jokes that made me roll my eyes, but also made me laugh. Even her father, who wasn't exactly known for emotional displays, managed to say something about family and tradition that sounded rehearsed but sincere enough. I thought, this is it. This is the start of everything. And then the doors opened. At first, I thought it was a late guest. The kind who forgot the start time, but still shows up with a gift and an apology. But the man who stepped inside wasn't carrying flowers, wasn't dressed for celebration, and didn't wear the awkward grin of someone who arrived late. He walked in with purpose, and when his eyes locked on my fiancée, something in my chest dropped. He didn't even hesitate. He walked right into the middle of the room, lifted something small and silver above his head, and spoke in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Funny," he said, spinning the necklace in his fingers like it was a trophy. "She left this in my bed last week." Everything stopped. The laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses, gone. For a second, I thought I misheard him. But when I turned to look at her, my fiancé's face drained of all color. And that told me everything I needed to know. Gasps rippled through the room. I heard whispers, chairs scraping, someone muttering "no way." My hand tightened around the glass, so hard I thought it would shatter. I wanted to believe this was some sick prank, some misunderstanding, anything but what it looked like. But the look on her face wasn't shock. It was guilt. She started shaking her head, her voice breaking as she stammered out excuses. First, she said it wasn't hers. That lie lasted all of 5 seconds, because half the room had seen her wear it before. Then she switched her story and said she lost it months ago. Maybe he picked it up to stir trouble. But he laughed. God, the way he laughed, smug, satisfied, like this was the moment he'd been waiting for. He twirled the necklace, listing off days and times like receipts. Every word chipped away at the picture-perfect image she had built. Her mother immediately jumped in, yelling that he was jealous, bitter, pathetic. She screamed that he had no right to ruin her daughter's happiness. I stood frozen, trying to piece together how my night had turned into this circus. I finally forced myself to speak. I asked her, directly, if it was true. I didn't shout. My voice was steady, but inside I felt like the floor was caving in under me. She couldn't even look me in the eye. She mumbled something about him making it up, about him being obsessed with her, about people not knowing the full story. But her words didn't match her face. Her excuses were collapsing faster than she could come up with them. My best friend was beside me, his jaw tight. He didn't say much, just leaned close and whispered, "Man, this doesn't look good." Hearing it from him made it real. Her father, who had been silent up until then, finally asked her one direct question. "Did you see him after the engagement?" She froze. She didn't answer, and her silence was louder than anything else. The room erupted. People argued, some saying the ex should be kicked out, others demanding she admit the truth. Her mother shielded her like a bodyguard, hurling insults at anyone who doubted her daughter. My best friend shouted back, saying the truth was already out in the open whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. And me? I stood there, stuck between rage and humiliation. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers, but the more I looked at her, the less I saw the woman I thought I was marrying. All I saw was a stranger who had lied to my face while planning a wedding with me. The ex didn't stick around for long. He dropped the necklace on the nearest table, gave me one last smirk, and walked out like he'd won. And in a way, he had. He'd ripped the mask off her in front of everyone who mattered. She reached for me as soon as he left, begging me to listen, swearing he was twisting things, promising she would explain everything later. I pulled my arm away. I didn't want explanations whispered behind closed doors. She had already been exposed in front of everyone. What good were her excuses now? Guests started leaving. I saw people shaking their heads, whispering, avoiding eye contact with me as they slipped out the doors. The band that had been playing quietly in the corner began packing up their instruments. The whole night unraveled in less than 10 minutes. Her mother kept repeating that this wasn't the end, that I couldn't throw everything away because of one bitter man. But her father looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Not sympathy, not anger at me, but disappointment in her. By the time the hall emptied, the engagement party was nothing but scraps of what it had been. My best friend walked beside me, silent but steady, while her family clustered around her in a mix of panic and shame. I thought that night would be the celebration of our future. Instead, it was the funeral of everything I thought I knew about her. When the last of the guests shuffled out, the hall felt more like a crime scene than a celebration. The decorations looked ridiculous now, balloons sagging in the corners, centerpieces untouched, the half-melted cake sitting under bright lights no one wanted to stand near anymore. The band carried their cases to the door without looking at me. I stood there, staring at the necklace on the table like it was radioactive. She kept trying to come near me, eyes swollen, begging me not to believe what everyone had just heard. Her mother pulled her close, whispering furiously in her ear. Her father stood off to the side, his hands shoved into his pockets, saying nothing. My best friend stayed beside me, his hand on my shoulder like he expected me to snap at any moment. I didn't say another word inside that hall. I turned and walked toward the exit, and of course, she ran after me. Her heels clicked against the floor, echoing in the empty space. I heard her call my name, over and over, the words tripping on themselves. When I stepped into the parking lot, the cold air slapped me harder than anything she could have said. I wanted space, air, silence. But I didn't get any of that, because the ex was still there. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed, smoking like he'd been waiting for me. When he saw me, he smirked again, and something inside me nearly snapped. Before I could say a word, my best friend stepped between us. He wasn't the type to start fights, but he wasn't about to let me throw the first punch either. Still, his voice was sharp, accusing the ex of showing up just to destroy lives. The ex laughed, said something about me, deserving to know the truth, and flicked his cigarette onto the ground. The fiancée ran out just then, screaming at him to leave, her voice hoarse from crying. Her mother followed, telling me not to listen to a single thing that came out of his mouth. But then her father came last, his face dark, and he asked the one question that no one else seemed willing to touch. Why would he come here if it wasn't true? That silenced everyone. She stood frozen, lips trembling. Her mother barked at him to stop making things worse, but he didn't back down. He demanded his daughter tell all of us, if she had seen him after the engagement. And just like inside the hall, she didn't answer. I turned away, because if I looked at her for another second I might have said something I couldn't take back. She reached for me, but I kept walking. My best friend followed close, leaving her standing in the lot between her parents and her ex. As I opened my car, she tried one last time. She begged me to listen in private, swore there was an explanation, pleaded that this was all a setup. But her words felt like sand in my ears. I got in, closed the door, and drove away with her still shouting behind me. That night should have ended there. I should have gone home, locked the door, and let silence take over. But it didn't. My best friend came with me, refusing to leave me alone. We sat in my living room, the engagement photos still pinned to the fridge, staring at each other in disbelief. He poured us drinks, neither of us tasting them, both of us replaying the scene over and over. An hour later, there was pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding. When I opened it, she was there, her mascara streaked, her voice breaking, her mother right behind her. She tried to force her way in, but my best friend blocked her. She begged. She swore. She said she loved me, that she made a mistake, that it wasn't what it looked like. She tried every angle: anger, tears, guilt, desperation. Her mother chimed in, blaming the ex, saying he was out to destroy her because he couldn't stand losing her. But then her father showed up. He didn't knock. He walked right past them and straight into my living room like he owned the place. He looked at me, then at his daughter, and then back at me again. And for the first time, I saw shame on his face. He told me he didn't blame me if I called the whole thing off. He admitted that her behavior had been reckless, selfish, and humiliating. He said he wouldn't defend her if I wanted out. Her mother nearly exploded, screaming at him for taking my side, accusing him of betraying his own family. He shot back that she had been coddling their daughter for years, enabling her, making excuses for everything. The argument between them boiled over right in my living room. Meanwhile, she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, begging me not to listen to any of it. She crawled toward me, grabbing at my knees, swearing that if I just gave her a chance, she'd prove the ex was lying. But she couldn't answer the simplest question: why was he holding her necklace? The shouting between her parents grew so loud the neighbors came out to check. And then, because this nightmare wasn't messy enough, the ex returned. He parked across the street and started yelling from the sidewalk, mocking the entire scene. He called her a liar, called me a fool, called her parents cowards. Her father stormed out to confront him, fists clenched, while my best friend had to hold me back from doing the same. It almost turned into a fight right there on the pavement. People from the building gathered to watch, recording on their phones, gossip spreading like wildfire. Finally, the police showed up. Someone must have called them. They didn't arrest anyone, but they broke it all up. They told the ex to leave or risk trespassing. He laughed, got in his car, and peeled off, but not before shouting one last thing that made my stomach twist. She'll be back. She always comes back. The officers told everyone else to go home. Her parents argued all the way down the street. My fiancée stayed on the curb, shaking, staring at me like she was waiting for me to invite her inside. But I didn't. I closed the door and locked it. The next morning, my phone was flooded. Missed calls from her. Dozens of texts. Voicemails I didn't bother listening to. My mother called, asking what happened at the party because word had already spread through relatives. My coworkers texted me links to grainy phone videos of the fight outside my building. It was everywhere. And then came the message that pushed everything further off the rails. My best friend showed me screenshots he'd been sent by one of his acquaintances who was at the party. Apparently, the ex had been bragging online about what happened, posting cryptic things about winning and hinting that this wasn't over. Her father called me later that day. He asked if I would meet with them, both families, to try to clear the air. I laughed bitterly, but he sounded serious. He said the situation had spiraled so far out of control that it needed to be addressed before it tore everything apart. I didn't agree right away, but part of me wanted closure. Part of me wanted her to sit in a room with her parents, with my family, with me, and finally tell the truth. That night, as I sat in my apartment surrounded by unanswered messages, I realized something. The engagement wasn't just broken. The fallout had only begun. And if her ex thought he'd already destroyed me, he had no idea what was coming next. I spent the next few days walking around like I was stuck in someone else's life. My phone never stopped buzzing. Relatives wanted answers. Friends sent me half-joking messages about how my engagement party was the talk of the town. Even people I barely knew suddenly had opinions, forwarding me videos of the chaos outside my building like it was entertainment. Meanwhile, she didn't stop calling. Every morning there were dozens of missed calls, voicemails stacked up, long texts that swung wildly between begging and blaming. Some messages told me she loved me more than anything, that she could explain everything if I just listened. Others accused me of humiliating her by not defending her at the party, that I let her ex win. The tone shifts made it impossible to know which version of her was real anymore. Her father was the only one from her side who sounded remotely grounded. He called me directly, his voice rough, telling me we needed to sit down, both families, and end the speculation before it swallowed us whole. I didn't trust her, I didn't trust her mother, and I sure as hell didn't trust the ex. But I wanted it finished. So I agreed. The dinner was set at her parents' house. I walked in with my best friend, because there was no chance I was facing that chaos alone. The moment we stepped inside, I could feel the tension pressing against the walls. The table was already set, but no one looked hungry. She sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap, eyes darting everywhere but mine. Her mother sat beside her, stiff, glaring at me and my friend like we were intruders. Her father stood at the head of the table, trying to look like he was in control, but his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Then the front door opened, and to my disbelief, her ex strolled in. I shot to my feet immediately, ready to walk out, but her father raised a hand. He said he invited him. He wanted everything on the table. My best friend cursed under his breath, muttering that this was a disaster waiting to happen. The ex sat down with a grin, like he had been waiting for this all week. He didn't waste time. He leaned forward and said he hadn't lied at the party. He repeated his claim that she had been with him after the engagement, smirking at her like it was some inside joke. Her mother screamed at him to shut his mouth. Her father slammed the table, demanding she answer. This time, clearly. She started crying, hiding her face, insisting it wasn't what it looked like, that I had to trust her. But then the ex dropped something heavier. He said she had promised him money. He said she told him she would find a way to give him part of the wedding fund to help him out. My best friend nearly flipped the table. He accused her outright of planning to drain money that wasn't even hers to hand to the man she swore she wasn't seeing. She shook her head frantically, saying it was a lie, but her father's face went pale. He asked her directly if she had touched the account he had helped set up for the wedding. She couldn't answer. Her father stormed out of the room, came back a minute later with a folder in his hands, and slammed it onto the table. Inside were receipts, bank withdrawals, transactions that didn't line up with what she had told him. He demanded an explanation. She stammered, tripping over excuses, first saying it was deposits, then saying she needed the money for something urgent, then saying she had every intention of paying it back. That's when my best friend pulled out his phone. He had been holding back, but not anymore. He opened his messages and read aloud texts she had sent to one of her friends, texts where she bragged about keeping both me and her ex hooked, Texts where she complained about her father controlling the wedding budget. Texts where she said she would make it work for everyone by lying to all of us. Her mother tried to grab the phone, shouting that it wasn't proof that friends lie. But her father looked at her like something inside him had finally broken. He told her mother to stop protecting her, that their daughter had been spiraling for months and they had ignored it. That dinner turned into a battlefield. Her mother screamed at her father for humiliating their daughter. He shouted back that she had embarrassed herself. My best friend and the ex almost came to blows when the ex started smirking again, throwing in jabs about how none of us could keep her happy. She sat there, sobbing, then lashing out, blaming everyone. Me for not being understanding, her father for controlling her mother for putting pressure on her, the ex for exploiting her feelings. And then she turned on my best friend. She accused him of plotting against her, of making me paranoid, of never liking her in the first place. He laughed bitterly and told her he'd been trying to protect me from day one, and maybe he should have spoken up sooner. I sat in the middle of it, silent, watching her unravel. Every word she said sounded less like the woman I thought I knew and more like someone I couldn't recognize. Her father finally shouted over everyone, his face red, veins bulging. He told her she had ruined everything. The trust, the wedding, the family's name. He told her he wouldn't pay another dime toward her plans, that she would take responsibility for every cent she wasted. Her mother broke down crying, clutching her daughter, still trying to paint her as the victim. But no one was listening anymore. The ex leaned back in his chair, arms behind his head, smiling like he was watching a play. My best friend stood, ready to leave, muttering that we'd already seen enough. And me? I stood too, because there was nothing left to say. Before I walked out, I looked at her one last time. She reached out, begging me to wait, promising me again that she loved me, that this was just a mess she had gotten lost in. But even then, with her voice cracking, she couldn't give me one straight answer. I told her I was finished. The engagement was over. Her father nodded grimly. Her mother screamed at me, called me heartless, said I was abandoning her daughter in her darkest moment. But the truth was clear. I hadn't abandoned her. She had betrayed me, and now she was facing the wreckage alone. When I stepped outside with my best friend, the cold air felt cleaner than anything in that house. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was breathing properly. The dinner hadn't solved anything. It had blown everything wide open. The lies, the money, the betrayals, all of it had been dragged into the light. And I knew then that this wasn't just the end of an engagement. This was going to have consequences no one at that table could escape. When I left that dinner, I thought the worst was over. I thought walking away meant the chaos would finally quiet down. But I was wrong. If the engagement party was the explosion, the days that followed were the aftershocks, and they didn't stop coming. The next morning, I called the venue, the caterer, and the photographer. I canceled everything. Not postponed, canceled. I told them to remove my name from every contract and forward any bills to her side of the family. Most of the accounts had been under her father's name anyway, since he had insisted on handling things properly. He had already promised to cover half the costs. But now, with everything exposed, I wasn't going to pay a single dime for a wedding that would never happen. The venue manager sighed, told me cancellation fees would apply, and promised to send the final balance. I didn't care. I wanted it in writing, something solid that proved this wedding was dead. Word spread fast. By noon, people who had been planning to attend were calling, asking why their invitations no longer mattered. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them the engagement was off because of her betrayal, and if they wanted details, they could ask her. I thought maybe I was being harsh, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. She showed up at my apartment again, this time with her mother. They pounded on my door, demanding to be let in. My best friend was with me, and he told me not to open it. I didn't. Instead, I shouted through the door that everything was canceled, that I had made my decision, and that nothing she said would change it. Her mother screamed threats, that I was slandering her daughter, that I would regret humiliating them, that I had no right to destroy her life like this. Her voice echoed through the hallway, and soon enough, neighbors were peeking out their doors. I didn't move. I let them yell themselves hoarse and eventually leave. But they weren't done. That evening, her father called me. His voice was calm, but beneath it was the kind of anger I had only seen once before, the night of the dinner. He told me he had received the cancellation bills. He told me he had gone through the wedding account and found large sums missing. And he told me his daughter was responsible for every single cent. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't beg me to reconsider. He simply said he was done funding her lies. If she wanted to fix her life, she would do it without his money. That was the first time I realized she wasn't just losing me. She was losing everyone. 2 days later, the ex came back into the picture, but not how I expected. His girlfriend, someone I had only heard about in passing, sent me a message online. She said she had seen the videos, that she knew her boyfriend had been at the engagement party, and she wanted to know the truth. I didn't respond at first, but my best friend encouraged me to meet her. We sat down in a cafe, and she showed me her phone. Dozens of messages from him to my ex-fiancée. Promises, plans, late-night calls, even photos. She had been in the dark the whole time, believing his excuses. Now she knew. She told me she had already ended things with him. She wanted me to know I wasn't alone, that she understood what betrayal felt like. Hearing it from her, a stranger who had been caught in the same web, made the whole thing feel less like a personal failure and more like a pattern my ex-fiancée couldn't stop repeating. But it also meant her ex had lost everything too. Not just me, not just her, but the other woman who had been in his life. For the first time, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. The collapse kept snowballing. Her father pulled funding from her apartment, telling her she could either find a job or move back home. She had been coasting on his support for years, padding her lifestyle with his money while pretending she was independent. Now it was gone. Her mother tried to argue, tried to paint her as the victim again, but it didn't work. Even her own relatives stopped defending her. People whispered about the engagement party, about the fight outside my apartment, about the dinner. Her name turned from admiration to pity, and then to ridicule. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I didn't post anything online, didn't spread more details than necessary. But silence can be louder than words. People filled in the blanks themselves, and most of them weren't kind to her. I had thought cutting her off would feel like losing a limb. Instead, it felt like dropping a weight I didn't realize I had been carrying. The final blow came a week later. Her father invited me to meet him privately. I was hesitant, but I went. We sat in his office, a heavy wooden desk between us, and he slid a stack of papers toward me. They were receipts, all the withdrawals from the wedding fund that she had secretly made. Thousands gone. Some for shopping, some for trips, some marked with nothing at all. He told me he planned to make her repay every cent. He didn't care how long it took. He said he wouldn't cover her debts anymore. And then he said something that stuck with me. You were lucky. You saw her before it was too late. I only wish I had seen her for who she really was sooner. For the first time, I realized he wasn't angry at me. He was angry at himself, for raising her, for ignoring the signs, for letting her get away with it for so long. When I left his office, I felt lighter. Not happy, not victorious, but free. The last time I saw her was unplanned. I was walking downtown with my best friend when we spotted her across the street. She looked smaller somehow, hunched, her hair messy, her clothes plain. She wasn't surrounded by admirers anymore. She was alone. She noticed me, froze, then took a step forward like she wanted to call out. But I shook my head and kept walking. There was nothing left to say. That night, I deleted the last of her messages. I cleared the photos from my phone. I even took the engagement ring, still sitting in its box, and sold it. The money went straight into my savings account. I didn't want reminders. I wanted a clean slate. People still ask me sometimes if I regret it. If I regret ending things so brutally, so publicly. And my answer is always the same. No. Because when someone shows you who they are in front of 100 people, you believe them. Her ex thought he had humiliated me by crashing my party. But in the end, he only pulled the mask off her for everyone to see. Her family thought they could control the damage, but it spread faster than any of them expected. And she thought she could juggle lies forever, but the weight crushed her. Me? I walked away with my dignity intact, my finances untouched, and my future still mine to shape. She lost everything. And that, in the end, was consequence enough. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.